So let's listen to Munro Bergdorf, what she had to say on Twitter, in reacting, I suspect, to a lot of criticism for what she said right there that we just heard from the This Week programme on BBC One. That's where she said what she said. And she said about 10 hours ago on Twitter, on Thursday, I was asked, do you think we will ever end racism? I said no. I'm not under the impression that we'll ever live in utopia. Will we ever live without murder? No. Will we ever live without rape? No. Will we ever live without abuse? No. But what we can do is learn to combat it. But we are so far off, she said, even getting close to combating it, when white people refuse to acknowledge they are the sole perpetrators of racism. Now, hang on, right there is I think, an absurdity. Of course, white people are not the sole perpetrators of racism. A completely bonkers thing to say. You know, plenty of racists of all different skin colours. Anyway, she goes on. Conversations literally stop in their tracks because it is almost impossible to raise the subject without them getting defensive. Racism is a system that involves everyone. I'm not talking about how you see yourself. You are part of a racist society, like it or not. So when I said all white people are racist, I am identifying the society we live in. The success of the white race is because of racism. So if you don't want to be labelled racist, do something about it. You don't get to benefit from racism, do nothing, and then kick off when called out. Highly controversial things to say, I would suggest. What do you think? 0345 60 60 973. There is someone explaining her controversial comments, but continuing to be controversial. Gerard's in Covent Garden. Gerard, good morning. What would you like to say?
Morning, Matt. So my position is this: your average English white man, whether they're working class, middle class, upper class, is a racist. In the sense that they've been told since infancy that the British Empire was a result of natural superiority of their Anglo-Saxon genes. That's what they built their nation on. Not me, that's what they built their nation on. And this idea that white people can be persecuted is absolute nonsense. The white man's position is based on power. A person in power cannot be racially abused. They're not victims of racism. Racists themselves hold the power. And that is what Britain has built itself off.
Gerard, I've got to correct you on something I think quite straightforward, which is, and I'm glad to hear you disagreeing with me now because I've changed sides on this argument. I still don't think that white people are in any very serious way persecuted in this country, but I do think that what Munro Bergdorf said was racist in the way that she said it, and I think it was unacceptable. I'll say this to you, Gerard. You said that British people, I think you said, but tell me if I'm misquoting you, it was only about a minute ago, so I hope I've got it right. You said, I think, that British people were brought up, or white British people are brought up to think that the empire was the result of British white people being superior. I wasn't brought up to think that at all. I wasn't educated that way in school. My parents certainly didn't educate me in that way.
Your society, you walk down the street, there's statue after statue glorifying out-and-out white supremacists. This is your society. Your curriculum in this country does not talk about the true legacy of empire. Your news and media do not address Britain's current ongoing wars, which all happen to be based on exploiting brown and black people around the world. And on the issue of whiteness, we have to remember that this is a complex thing. So, for instance, in this country, a Polish man, for your average English person, is outside their idea of whiteness. Before that, it was the Irish. They didn't see the Irish as the same level of white as your Anglo-Saxon. Irish people were drawn as monkeys and apes. They were referred to as white monkeys. So it's the English and the British nation that's the issue. And
no, you keep saying you're, Gerard, but you sound British to me.
Well, it is your nation, is it not, man?
Well, isn't it our country, Gerard? You sound very British. You sound as though you're born and bred in London.
I don't pledge my allegiance to this country, so that's neither here nor there.
To whom do you pledge your allegiance, Gerard?
That's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. We're talking about whether white people in this country can be persecuted against.
Hang on, Gerard. I think because you're making a set of rather sort of potent points that I disagree with. I say potent in that they're rather provocative. I think it's fair for me to ask you, given that you've just said, sounding very British, that you don't pledge your allegiance to this country, to ask you to whom exactly you do pledge your allegiance. It is here or there.
I'm not for me, is it? We're talking about whether English people in this country...
Well, you're the one who brought it up.
But you brought up your discussion on radio, not me.
No, you said that you don't pledge your allegiance to this country. I'd be very interested to know to whom you pledge your allegiance.
Before that, you asked me, you brought it up, Matt, not me. You said, I sound British. So why are you using the word "your"? So you brought the topic up, not me.
Yeah, but it was you who then said you don't pledge your allegiance to this country. So which country do you pledge your allegiance to, Gerard?
That's neither here nor there, man.
Well, you're too cowardly to admit that you pledge your allegiance to another country. Come on, Gerard.
Oh, yeah, all right, man. All right, man. Look, at the end of the day, your system in this country, the system you accept...
Our system, Gerard. Our system.
No, your one, because I reject that very system. Your system is a racist one.
But you're British, Gerard.
How do you know what passport I hold?
Well, I suspect that you're British.
You don't.
Do you hold a British passport, Gerard?
No, I don't.
Did you hold a British passport?
I did at one point in my life, yeah.
And you've given it up?
I'm an Irish citizen now, Matt.
Let me challenge you on this, Gerard.
Yeah.
You say that British wars around the world are exploiting brown people. Can you give me an example of a war that Britain is currently involved in that is exploiting brown people?
Okay, Britain is currently involved in a number of covert wars in Libya, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Pakistan. Are those people white?
But you think we're exploiting people? So let's take Syria, for example, where the Brits and the Americans... Hang on, the Brits and the Americans, and you can think that the way they're going about it is wrong. You can be opposed to bombing, you can be opposed to drone strikes, of course you can. The reason that we are doing what we're doing in Syria is to get rid of Islamic State, and guess what Islamic State are doing? They're being wicked against brown people.
Nonsense. You, this country, waged war on Syria initially, not against Islamic State. You waged war against President Assad, didn't you?
Well, we didn't wage war against Assad. We thought about it, but we didn't do it.
No. You supplied the material to the very forces that waged war on Assad in 2013. Many of them members
Gerald, what do you think? What do you think Assad was doing? What do you think Assad is doing?
That's none of your business.
Of course, I'm telling you, he's exploiting, as you would say, brown people.
You cannot put that on the same scale as Britain. Britain is the biggest genocidal maniac ever to exist in this world. And how dare you point your finger at President Assad? How dare I point my finger at Assad? Because I'm not a genocidal maniac. I don't sign up to genocidal wars. And I'll tell you what, Gerard, that man, Assad, is a wicked monster. Would you agree with me that Assad is a wicked monster, Gerard, or is he not? Because he's brown. You destroyed Libya in 2011. Who are you to give messages to other leaders?
I didn't destroy Libya in 2011. I had nothing to do with it.
Britain. Your society.
I didn't vote for David Cameron's Conservative Party or the Lib Dems, Gerard.
President Assad, if you're going to push all of the blame onto President Assad, a man who was in charge of a secular society, and now you're saying you're fighting Islamic State, why did you create the proxy war in Syria in the first place?
President Assad was a dictator who was prepared to be a brutal man to his own people.
President Assad was being wined and dined in Buckingham Palace 6 or 7 years before you went to war with him. Was he really that bad? You were wining and dining him.
I wasn't wining and dining him, Gerard, any more than you were. Were you wining and dining him?
Your queen.
You had a British passport, Gerard. It was your queen as well. Were you wining or dining him?
You know what I gave up, Matt. You don't know what I gave up. The point is, you need to accept responsibility. Your society is a racist one. And you can't go around pointing your fingers at other world leaders. Next, you're going about Zimbabwe next, and all you do is point your finger at Mugabe in this country. Let's not forget, it was white racist settlers from Britain, from Holland, that went to South Africa, and then Rhodesia, named after Cecil Rhodes, the biggest genocidal white maniac ever to live. And you dare point your finger at these world leaders.
It wasn't bigger than Hitler, was he, Gerard? Gerard, listen, almost entertaining to chat to you. You're certainly very passionate about what you feel. I'm not sure I've ever taken a call from someone who has given up their British citizenship, but I'm no one to defend Britain's extremely wicked past in many ways, and colonialism. Although there were some benefits, I think it's fair to say, colonialism, in my eyes, was an evil. Why? Because it was Brits going abroad, and not just Brits, of course, as I said earlier, Dutch, Belgians, all sorts, Portuguese going abroad and exercising their dominion through force of arms over another people. I'm no defender of that. I'm no defender of Britain's legacy in the slave trade. Whoever it was who said earlier on the show, oh, well, it was white people who abolished the slave trade. I've never heard of anything so ridiculous in my life. We can't pat ourselves on the back for that. And we went into war in Iraq, which turned out to be a colossal mistake. We've made so many mistakes. But the idea that we are doing what we're doing in Syria to somehow exploit brown people, as Gerard has just said, is also absurd. And I find it rather shocking that Gerard talks about a society that he was clearly brought up in as your. I think that is a highly extreme position. Gerard, thank you in Covent Garden for keeping us busy and entertaining us.